84% of people believe company culture is important to an organization's
right, about ready. This is animation critique time. Bring anything and everything animation related, and we will take a look. If you need help getting something into the folder, let me know in the chat. And as soon as I see something up there, let's see. Already got one. All right, Samir. Let's do it. Let me download. Morning, Samir. Yeah, no problem, Bryce. All right, weight shift. Let's check it out. All right. So it's pretty big, pretty broad overall. So one of the things you might do here at the beginning, I don't want to change your style or anything like that. So let me try to work within it. So just looking at the position that your character is in right now, like where they're facing, like head slightly low. So the ball comes in, whatever it is. I think one of the things for me is we're in this position. We get hit by the ball and we're in this position for the most part. It basically gets hit and we go into that new position. And what I am thinking is it needs to be like we're in this position, boom, we get hit, and then we boom, hit, we come up, and then it's just like this seethe to go back down. I think the thing that I'm struggling with right now is you hit this position and you stay in it for so long, where the natural inclination would be to get hit, and you don't have to like look around or anything. It's either that or just the, like this build right here, you're translating the hips around, and so you see a lot of movement happening in the legs, but not a lot in that. So what I would recommend or kind of want to see is the idea of this slow build right now. It's a little bit violent and a little bit herky-jerky, but also it feels like the hips aren't like rotating into it, like you're just like going into yourself, pulling in, and then you're just gonna explode out. You're already in that position, and then it's just translating around lower and lower. Hopefully that makes sense. So you can either get hit with this ball or rock or whatever it is, doesn't matter. You need to get hit with it, and then it's like you hit, you settle, and it's like then you have this quick like pop up, and then you build into what you've got. Or if you don't do that, if you get hit and you're just there, as you build down, you want to get some kind of rotation within those hips, if that makes sense. It's just a little bit, you're getting a little bit in there, right? But it feels like it's just like too herky-jerky on the way down. So what I would also do with that is a slower, not necessarily consistent build, but a little bit more consistent, because it's so like, and I think it's just more like, think about like, if I'm gonna like, right? You've got this slow build. Versus the more like erratic. All right, so that gets us through the beginning part. I would try to soften some of these angles and curves as they come through here. So this shape, and then we have this really hard, like 90-degree put in here. I don't mind, reversing the knee, bringing it back, but like again, this shape where it's 90 degrees, I would try to, the shape that you kind of want. Too much music. There you go. Hopefully that's better. All right, so what you're trying to get, the overall impression, as you come through here, is this whip. And so we got to soften up some of those angles. Whoops. You might need a little bit of a transition where this foot is pointed this way, and then you have the next frame, it's pointed that way. So you might need a frame in there. So we were over here, maybe at least one, like right there, and then to here, and you have some time, right? You got multiple frames in here. And then you just want to be careful with that, where you're completely reversing that knee. I mean, the idea can work. It's pretty crazy. Again, it's just it's a big change. So I think a lot of these, it's softening up some of your really hard angles that are hitting really, really fast, and it makes things feel not as fluid. Even this, right? Break up that toe. I know it probably doesn't seem like a lot, but I would start to break that toe up. You like to reverse that knee. You do it all over. Again, probably a little bit of a hard hit right there where it slams forward and bounces back. You can soften that just a little bit if you want. Right now it's flying forward, feels like it hits the wall and then comes back along that same path. You can get just a couple of frame cushion by overshooting and arcing. Okay, so in just watching it, 3 big notes. Work on the jitter at the beginning. Work on getting better curves and a little bit more fluidity in those legs and the feet as they're doing all their crazy things. You don't change the crazy stuff. We just need to soften some of those curves as much as you can. And then watch that hard hit at the end. Okay? Again, overall, pretty good. So you should, I believe, you should have some bend bows. I haven't looked at that rig in a long time, but you should have some bend bows in these the upper and lower leg. I'm pretty sure. And that's probably on the main control. All right. Okay, let's see if there's anything else. Oh, all right. We've got some new, maybe, Zara is here. All right. Okay. Okay, hey Samira, I'll take a look. I'll take a look in just a little bit to see if I'll download that rig just to check it out. All right, Zara, let's look at your 3-ball bounce. It's not bad. All right, there's a lot going on all at once, so let me... All right. So we'll start with, I'll get the heavy one out of the way. So one thing I would probably do, because the, excuse me, whatever this is, the like board or whatever, comes out and just touches it, and then the ball bounces off. I think you need to take this out, you know, for another frame or two, a little bit further. Otherwise, it basically looks like it goes dink and just meets it. It'll give it a little bit more force to actually push that thing off. So we go out over one, and then give me 1, 2 more of it kind of going out. As far as the bowling ball goes, it looks pretty good, I will say. I don't have a ton of notes. You know, the beach ball does stop it. Like, it changes its direction a little bit, which I'm not positive it would be able to do that. If it was going really, really slow, it might be able to stop it. And then I guess if you wanted to add that little roll in, I guess it could work. That would probably be the only thing that I would say. All right, let's look at the yellow ball. So you want to watch the rotation. I know it's really hard to see right now, and you might not even show up, but because that control handle is there, I can kind of see it. So there's not necessarily anything wrong with it spinning backwards, but when you get in here, then it like stops rotating in here. It starts wobbling back and forth. I would try to arc this maybe just a little bit more. Right now it feels a little bit straight, so just get a little bit more of an arc on there. One issue that you have right now is this is this is a beach ball, and this is like a tennis ball. The beach ball has no momentum driving this way. It's just dropping straight down. So there's not really anything that's going to like give you a whole lot of force back the other way. And this does, right? This is taking all the force that was just pushed through this in this direction. So when this tennis ball hits something that's really just moving straight down and it hits it right on the side, which is totally fine, it gives the impression that that beach ball has a lot of weight to it because it's sending the other thing straight back in the other direction. My guess is if you had a beach ball and were dropping it and you took a tennis ball and threw it at it, what's going to happen? It's going to push right through that beach ball. So it gives a little bit of a weird feeling to it to force it back in the other direction. I think once you get past that, you know, if we were kind of ignoring some of that, ignoring this idea right in here, once you hit this little ledge, we bounce here, you know, that works pretty well. You know, all of that looks pretty good. You might have just a tiny little bit of a issue right here. I would still, even though it's hitting almost right on the top and you're going this way, I would kind of expect it to probably do something like this. If it wasn't there, if that beach ball wasn't there, right, it would just keep doing this. So it's not going to stay on like the same kind of trajectory because there's a slight angle to this. I would expect it, though, to probably change it, but then do something like this. So what you might want to think about, two things that would help fix both issues. If this ball, or the tennis ball, were to hit like right here, it would help sell that idea. Oh, hold on. If you hit the beach ball and it pushes through it, how would you do that? I just mean it would like push it out of the way as it goes. So we could do this. So if I were animating this just how it is, and we hit there, this beach ball is going to absorb some of the momentum and it's going to push it this way, like what you're doing here. The only difference is, as this comes through here, yes, you want to kind of think about what would the path be if that wasn't there. It would probably be maybe something like this. Maybe something like that. I don't know. Something in there. You could probably make any of those work. But because this is going to absorb some of the momentum, it's going to kind of, as this gets pushed back this way, it's going to go with it, and it might force it down here because it's going to eat up some of its momentum. So it would just make it drop sooner. But you don't have to do that because then that's going to cause you to rework, unless you want to rework all of that other stuff. But what you can do is take the beach ball like that. So now the beach ball has some momentum coming in this way but it's going to have to move quickly, right? It's going to have to move quickly in order to want to push something that probably is a little bit hard, definitely a little bit harder, but also when you compare a beach ball and a tennis ball, I mean, neither one of them are really heavy, but the beach ball is so light compared to, again, a tennis ball isn't that heavy, but you want a decent speed coming in through here. And again, you can still have everything meet there. You just need that beach ball to come in like that. And then I think you might be okay, right? Then this thing gets pushed out of the way. It would be a little bit hard to maybe justify that it's coming straight across. Again, because it's coming down, it might want to get pushed that way. But that's the same kind of case here, right? We're going straight down. This is getting hit straight there. It's probably still wants to come down some. So, but you could change that really easily. You could shorten this so it's down here and it hits. There's easy ways to kind of work your way around that. I think your beach ball is good overall, other than maybe that beginning part. It does get a little bit heavy on you right there. So this drop it's just a little bit fast. That's kind of it. I would say overall it's pretty solid. There's just a few things in there that probably need to be adjusted to make them feel, with your beach ball, make it feel like a beach ball, and then like the direction and momentum issues. Okay. I don't know if Zara's here or not, but all right, Bryce. Let's take a look at this, and then we'll go into here. Let me turn that off. Then we'll do Zara's other one. Okay. Not bad. Let's take a look here. So the roll looks pretty good. I would. All right. So this though, where you slide off, you want to rotate that. So roll again, and you're probably thinking, well, I need to get into the right position in order to squash and stretch. So you can roll over the top. I think you could probably sell that correctly, so that you do rather than having this pointing down, you could have this pointing down. If that makes sense. So we'll just turn over. If you're treating it like a bottom and a top, the top would be facing down. I don't think it'll really change anything, but we do need, otherwise it feels a little bit fake. The other option that you could do, if you don't want to do that, is squash, do a little hop, and then come down. So two solutions that would probably work for that. So once you drop, realistically, if we're hitting this and we're hitting this angle and we're coming straight down here, it's probably going to bounce. Realistically, it'll probably bounce rather than slide right in. But that would cause you to change a lot. So I'll just point it out. Realistically, you would probably bounce in there. In terms of, I'm just going to skip by that. So if we can make this work and it would match up with that. Let's look at spacing. So overall, the spacing feels pretty even through here. And what you're going to need to do, like, so once you start sliding into here, you do feel the slowdown right in here, and then it gets pretty even, and then we're slow in here. So, you know, each frame, we're moving about the same amount. So what you've got to justify is, if your ball has to make this move, how fast do you need to be going through this part? Because the rest of it is going to be kind of slowing down for the most part until you get into here. Then you're dropping, you're going to speed back up. So you might need to speed this up. So when he hits, it's like, let me go one frame forward. So if you're here, and then it's even there, you might want to whoops, we're going like this. So right through here, this is where you get all your speed. So we need, you know, less drawings. Let's see how many you got. So kind of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 while you're on that, and maybe you lop 2 off. And you might be able to lop off 1 or 2 in here as well. Make sure you're pointing. This might need to be rotated just a little bit to make sure. You can really just draw out the path, and then your squash and stretch should be pointing along it the whole time. So, like, another thing that you can look at, based on this right now, your ball should be going in that direction, right? And when we look at it, we're kind of going in this direction. That'll tell you if you need to rotate things. If your path does that, but your squash and stretch is doing that, then something's off. Either you're traveling the wrong direction or your rotation. Really, it would just be rotation, so we just rotate that around. If that makes sense. Watch out for right here. So right here, let me see if I can erase some of these. All right. That didn't work, but we'll switch colors. So we're here. It feels like rather than like on the path that you're going right now, the ball would be here when you hit, and right now it kind of goes there. It feels like it's dropping. So match that up so it doesn't feel like it's stopping its arc short. And then the other thing you would want to look at is how are you coming in to this. That's going to be, that'll affect the way you go out. You know, you could justify up there maybe, but realistically it's probably going to be doing this. So when you change and go in a different direction, sometimes you need to justify that. So a solution you could do is you could just take this little ledge and angle it slightly. Okay, so just give it a little rotation, and then now we're hitting a slanted surface, so it's going to hit and it's going to change its direction, and that might better match up with what you need to do. That's all you got to do, and now it makes sense. Just want to watch so you got your squash here. Remember, this will be the most stretch you've got. So what you might be running into is the ball is rotating and you're like, oh, I don't know what to do because it's gonna, you know, if you turn your stretch on right here, right, it's gonna be pointing the other way. But also remember, we want to rotate in the path of the arc. So you should go ahead and rotate that ball over. Again, you can bring this ball over and rotate it. You want to point along the path, always pointing. Your ball's not going to be rotated one way and you're traveling a different way. Because if you add the squash and stretch it should be on, then it'll be pointing in a different direction. And then if you start doing all that rotation, it'll look like a football. So you do need to be a little bit careful with it. Hopefully that makes sense. justify this curve correctly, so arc it up just a little bit more. Make sure this one is arced correctly. So you just need this arced just a little bit better. It's coming through a little bit flat right through here. Finish this arc out correctly. It's getting cut off a little bit short. And then let's make sure we round that one out again correctly as well. Okay? So there are definitely times where it does feel like it's slow and then it speeds up through certain parts that might be a little bit, might give just a slight disconnect. But I think the biggest thing, round out your arcs, make sure those make sense. That's number one. And then right through this part is the only part where you kind of lost the squash and stretch to work correctly. And you just got to rotate the ball and point it along the path. There's really two ways that you could approach the squash and stretch for this. And that is to always get it rotating. So if you have to do something like this, and I'll draw it like this. We can say there's the top, here's the bottom, and when we bounce, we're doing this, and then we have no squash and stretch, but what's it going to look like up here? It's going to look like that, and then when we come down here, we do that, right? You could treat it like that. There's nothing wrong with that. Or you can treat it like it has a head and legs. So that you rotate along that path, but when you get back up, you correct. And then you come back down and you're doing this. If that makes sense. Okay? Those are really the two ways to get the squash and stretch to work correctly along the path. Because if you treat it like a ball that's just always rolling, it's going to be a football through the air and it'll look wrong all the time. Okay? All right, Zara, we'll take a look at yours. Hey, that's pretty good. There's one issue that, like, on my first viewing, there's a squash and stretch error in there. But that's pretty solid, Zara. That is, I like it. Okay, let's look at the one error, which is right there. Oh, and we're going through the through the stuff. All right, so we're dropping. Boom, we hit that. So we don't want to go through the geometry. That's an easy fix. Just rotate it a little bit more. So this one's fine. Rotate that platform a little bit more, and then you're good. All right, so remember, we've got stretch, stretch, squash, 2 frames. You've got your 2 frames. What should this frame be? A stretch as you come out. Got our 2 frames. There's our stretch, but you go back to a squash. So here's your stretch, and let's see where we're going to go. We're going to go all the way over. Hey, if this is in the way, delete it. Let's see if you use it. No, you don't ever use that. Delete that thing, and then you don't have the problem of going through there. But this has to stretch. I think we come all the way over here. You need to be stretching all through here. Okay? So it should just be one long continuous stretch for the most part. I mean, you could ease off a little bit up here, but what you got to remember is you got to be traveling fast enough to justify what you're about to do. So we hit here. Now, one thing you could do is you could hold here a little bit longer on that to build up force and build up momentum and then explode out of there. In that case, it would just be a hard stretch all the way across to get through there. Okay? So that, to me, like, that looks good. I mean, like, really solid. Let's look at the orange one just to make sure. we go through the thing again. That's not a big deal. It's magic. So that all looks great. The only thing that you've got going on right through here is you've got the rotation going, so it's getting harder for you to turn on that stretch as that orange one comes out. You've got it right there at the end, but because you're rotating in the air, it's not allowing you to turn that stretch on. Nothing wrong with that. I'm fine with it. Generally, a lot of times what I will do when I'm doing this type of an assignment is I don't do a ton of rotation, and I just treat it as an object moving through space, and it's just, I'm not having the ball roll, I guess is what I'm saying, until it gets onto something like this, and I needed it to roll. If I needed it to roll, then I would not do squash and stretch, and I would let that rotation go. And certainly by the end, I've basically turned off squash and stretch a little bit of what you're doing here at the end with the orange one, and I'm just working rotation then, and I kind of turn that idea of squash and stretch off. So that's it. Fix up a little bit of that red one going through there. There might have been one or two other things, and you're done. This is great. All right. Let's see. All right, that's all I got so far. Well, wow, we're already 38 minutes in. Okay, any questions for anybody who's on? Anybody you want to see, especially for the people who are in Animation 1? Like, Amanda, do you want to see anything specific? And I could, like, I've got... Hey, Todd's here. I've got the squash and stretch obstacle course on. So if you want to see me animate this really quickly, I could. Or like how I would approach it. In fact, why don't I just do that? Real quick. I'm gonna scoot this out of the way. So if I was gonna animate this right here. All right. So I'm just gonna have this ball right now. I'm gonna take it and I'm gonna bounce it. It's gonna go off screen to make it make sense and land down here. Let's just do the one bounce. And I'll show you how I normally do it. I normally treat it like it has a head and legs. So I rotate it in the direction, correct it, and then come back down. It's not, again, not to say that the other way is wrong. It's just the way I do it. So I'll just move through this quick. All right, so we got some squash. The other thing that I would probably do, I like to rotate in the direction that I'm about to go. So I'm going to do a little rotation and then a little bit of translation. So we get a little bit of that rocking in there. We squash, anticipate, we rotate, a little bit of anticipation, getting us ready. And then we will go. Let's see if I can back out. Yeah. So we'll hop this up about 8-ish frames. No, we don't want to do that. That's too much. we'll do 6. And all I'm going to do right now is just place it. We'll say about right there. So no squash and stretch at the top of the arc. And for the way that I'm going to animate this, no rotation either. So we can zero this out and then zero the rotation out. The rotation on this right now is at 180 to get it back to its regular starting position. So I put it back to 180. Yuck, that's awful. Okay, we can fix that later though. And we know that this frame, oh, that's why. I didn't key all of that. So let's put that back. All right, we'll have to round that arc out. Let's do that now. So you should be familiar with all this. So right now, everything that I'm doing is the same thing that we did in our half pipe. Whoa, what happened to my graph editor? Went up there. Tear this thing off. I don't like having it up there. Oh well. I'll deal with it for right now. All right. So we've got our translate. Go in here. We're going to break the tangent. We're going to bounce this up. So based on what I've got right now, like if you look at the rotation of this ball, you can get a feel for where it should go. And then if you look at this, it's kind of moving in a different direction. So let's put our squash or stretch on there. So we're going to stretch back out. So you can see it gives you a feeling for where it should be traveling. But if we kind of look at it, it doesn't quite match up. It's probably traveling too far and too fast. But we can fix all that. We can just bring it back. All right. Based on what I'm doing right now, I don't know if I'm going to clear this little ledge. All right, so for the angle that I originally put and for the amount of time that I'm taking to get up there, I had to keep scooting it back to the right to justify kind of what I had. Now, if I wanted to get it further over, I'd have to do some more rotation and I'd probably have to give it some more time. So now we want to try to get down, man, where this should realistically land is probably like here. I could probably get there. All right, we'll try it. All right, so we're gonna land there. I have it at about 11 frames. It was 6 to get to the top of the arc, 11 to get down. We'll see if that feels all right. This frame should be a squash. Weird. So you can move those around, and there's a little bit of movement on mine. That's why it's off. A little off kilter there. All right. So we got a squash here. Let's look at our Y translate. Let's fix. Todd, my lights are so bright now in here that gives like a weird glare. It's hard to see. All right. So frame before contact, this is a stretch right here. And the thing we're missing right now is rotation. Yeah. So we want to point along the path. So we want to rotate it on back. Kind of like that. Okay, so let's take a look at it. So that works. We need to set the rotation here. I find it's easiest to just go ahead and flatten it on out. Like this when we run into it. Now, by doing that, it does give a little bit of a funky feel. So what we could do is set that position. We go here. It does feel like it's shifting back to the right, so we could just scoot it. And that might make it feel a little bit better. We want to make sure, yeah, that we didn't mess up that arc on our Y translate. Okay, you could speed it up. I could probably take out a frame or two. Oh, I almost cleared it. Okay. So if we were going to keep on going, so I'll bounce it up. So now's where, like, you want to kind of plan this out. If I wanted to jump over like that thing, I might want to stay on the ground a little bit longer, build up some of that anticipation in a squash to justify getting over that thing. Or if I wanted to do a nice little light one, I could bounce up here, hit this, roll into that, and go back up to where I started. Let me make sure there's nothing new. Okay, yeah, nothing new in there. So we'll just keep on going. So again, remember, we want 2 frames of contact. If I'm going to just immediately launch off and keep going, then what I kind of want to do is I'm just going to set another frame there. We'll do this. We'll stretch it on up, and then we want to point where we're going to go. Now you can see when I rotate, it gets funky, so we want to rotate, but we're also going to have to translate. And then what I'm going to do is rock back and forth. So previous frame, next frame. And does it look like it's rotating or spinning in place? So I just want to knock it over. There we go. Yeah, so let's do that. So if I want to add anticipation or add a build-up, all we're going to do is leave it down there. So let's say, so what do we got? 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's leave it down there for 4. So, but what you want to do is you don't want it to freeze. So we're gonna get a low, a small squash build. But we also are gonna put in like a little bit of our rotation of where we want to go. So for this, if I'm going to build up anticipation, I'm going to try to jump over this thing. So we'll go back to this. Main control. I'm going to set that key, and then I'm just going to rock it, rotate, and a little bit of translate. Now, since I'm now on the ground for like 4 frames, my next frame is the stretch, but I don't need to be still in contact with the ground. I can be, it's not necessarily wrong, but if you immediately come off the ground, it's going to give you a pop to it. So by building up that anticipation, it allows me to go a lot higher. So let's say I'm at 24. Let's give it 8 frames, and we're going to go say up here. So then let's zero out or put it at 180, the rotation, and zero out squash and stretch. Now we'll have to fix it here in a second. So 2 things, we want to fix the arc. So go back to my Y translate, break that tangent. So same thing we keep doing in every assignment, and then we're going to round it out. And then first frame off the ground, let's go ahead and fix that squash and stretch. Okay. Now again, you can come in and tweak the squash and stretch handles in the graph editor to make it a little bit more snappy, so it's not as gooey. But you can save that to the very end. So one of the things that is important in doing this, if you're rotating over the top, sometimes it gets a little bit easier with the squash and stretch to conform to that arc because it's rotating the whole way over. With this one, it's stretching, but it's wanting to rotate back out of that, which if you leave the stretch on for too long, it will stay stretched. So we can watch. If I leave that stretch on for too long, right, it implies that I'm going pretty much up, but I'm not, right? I'm going left. So that's why it's probably important to look at, this is my squash and stretch, this translate Y. It's probably important to tweak these so that it's fast to slow. So we're getting out of it a little bit sooner. So all of these, those. So you have something that works kind of like that. We could do the same for this. There. So if we play this now, so it's a little bit sticky down here. So you could probably hold that a little bit more if you wanted to. I feel like right now it's kind of in between. It's not the immediate bounce off, and it's not quite long enough to build up that momentum. So what we could do, let's select it all, and this will be easy because we set some keys there. All I want to do is come in and grab from 24, that was our last frame on the ground. I'm going to shift it 1, 2, 3. So I give it 3 more frames, so it should be 7 total. And now let's watch it. It's going to stay on the ground a lot longer. Hopefully it didn't mess anything up, but whoops. There you go. That feels a little bit better, that amount of time. So just 7 frames. Now I'm really building into it. There's some wobble in there, probably because when I pulled it out. Can we see more of your graph editor in my keys? Sure. So I did this, it like docked it up here. I don't know how to undock this. Oh. There we go. So I'll show you the main one first. The main thing that's moving everything. So here's our translate Y, and we've got two jumps, right? We've got the beginning one, and we've got the ending one, or the last one so far. And it's the same as everything you've been doing so far. We're just breaking the tangents and rounding the arcs out. That's it. The outliner. Oh, sorry. Let me pull this down. All right. So I've got my... I did it again. Stop that. Stop doing that. Y translate. And I'll scoot it. So you should be really familiar with this. It's just rounding out the arcs like we have been doing in all of the assignments. And we're not doing translate Z. And here is our moving right to left. And you saw, there's not a whole lot that I'm doing with that, right? I haven't even edited any of this. Now, we do have a little bit of rotation that's going on. But again, I'm not paying too close to that curve and what it's doing right now, because I'm really only doing a couple of things, right? I'm zeroing it out when I'm on the ground. I'm just going back to neutral. The top is neutral, and in the middle, I'm just rotating, pointing where I'm going. And it's really, you want to set that rotation to its most extreme when you first come off the ground. So when we look at this, right here, that's the most I'm probably going to be rotated right here along this path, because then I'm going to slowly go back to neutral. That's all it is. Now it's a little bit different, obviously, if I'm like really flying through the air. If I'm really flying through the air, then I might end up upside down at some point. Like if I were to go, let me take this, through this ramp, you know, there's not a whole lot I can do to keep everything right side up like this. So if we look at this, just a little bit, kind of like your half pipe. But if this is the bottom, the thing that's facing down into the ramp, let me put some squash and stretch on there. Like this. There's not a whole lot I can do to try to keep this face up. So you're just trying to do the best you can through here. So we'll just because we want to maintain that squash and stretch through the whole way. And if you're going to maintain the squash and stretch the whole way, then you have to point that ball along the path the whole time. You can't mess with that rotation. Correct, just like the half pipe in the class. So we end up upside down, right? With the half pipe, we start one way, we bounce, go through, and then land on our head, kind of. So when we go through this little ramp or this little arc, it's the same thing as the half pipe, right? It's the exact same. We're just placing it on there, making sure our spacing makes sense. And then once we get out of this, then we can go back to whatever. And neither is right or wrong the way you approach it, like the way that I did it. You're welcome to keep flipping over and over and over with that ball if you want to. First it lands on the bottom, then it lands on the top, then it lands on the bottom, then it lands on the top. Whichever is easiest. But then sometimes, like if I come out of this ramp and I slam into this, then there's not a whole lot I can do, right? The part that's in contact with that ledge right now it's gonna squash up, and then I could shoot back off and it might land here, right? So again, it's not right or wrong, and you might switch as you go through this. Does that kind of help? All right. I would probably, I'm looking at mine, probably increase some of my squash and stretch through here. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Let's see. Is there anything? All right. Cool. I think that's it then. There's nothing else in the folder. Kind of went through that assignment. For those in Animation 1, good luck. You can do it. Email me if you run into any problems, and I'll see if I can help you out. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Friday and weekend. I'll see you soon. Yep. Thanks for stopping by.